Hi and welcome back. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so this review is going to be no surprise to any of my regular followers because I previewed it last week with my little tongue-in-cheek thing about buying 4 identical Muse albums. It's the first time I've ever bought 4 of the same album. I'm just struggling. I think I might have bought 2 of an album before now, but anyway. There we go. I bought 4 Muse Will of the People records, and they provided, without doubt, the most definitive and helpful kind of conclusion to this test. So let me first of all just run through this, introduce this Degritter, because I did the same on the Humming Grew. Right. Unlike the Humming Grew, which I don't know what it weighs, about 3 kilos. I think this weighs probably about 10. That's only a guess, but it's a really solid, heavy unit. This is all metal. Whole thing is all metal. Sides, the whole chassis. Even by the feel of it, these knobs are metal. They've got that kind of soft, slightly rubberized touch. Not really rubberized, but sort of soft anodization. This is all anodized aluminium, I would guess. It's an entirely different feel to the Humming Grew. It really is. It feels like a quality item, and frankly I like the look of it too. I think it's pretty damn cool looking. Anyway, let me just turn it on and you can get I'll turn it on if we're hang on. Okay, on off switch at the back. Also at the back there is a SD card slot, which is for software firmware updates, and that's actually quite relevant because during the time I've had this, I've actually done a firmware update. This is just initializing itself, this little bit of noise, but you can see you've got a display that sort of kind of guides you through the whole thing all the way down the line. And it's worth mentioning that I did update the software or the firmware. So this is the latest version, which is kind of more icon based. And as you can see here, we've got wash cycle 4, and that takes, including drying, as I've got it set at the moment, 10-15. But I'm just going to run through some of these features here because it's an absolute joy to use. So here we go. 5:45. These are minutes and seconds. Number 2, 7:15, 8:45, and 10:15. Now it has to be mentioned that that's not how I actually typically used it. This next one here, this is the drying time, 3.5 minutes. You can adjust that from 0 up to, well, I don't know what, but unlike the Humming Grew, which I mentioned in 10 minutes of drying wasn't sufficient to thoroughly dry a record, 3.5 minutes on this it's a world of apart. They are as different as chalk and cheese. 2:15, that's a degassing program. You can see the little icon there. And then you get into the menus. Now, if I click here, you see I've got this deselected. I'm going to select that. Now that is like a pre-wash, a soak setting, which when we go back, you'll see the difference in the times. And then you've got this here, which if I select, you can have 2 different water chambers, and it will allow you to have a cleaning solution in the first one and a rinse in the second one, and it will alert you when you need to rinse it. I don't actually have 2 cleaning chambers, so I'm going to unselect that. Here, okay, I've literally just changed the filter, so this will show that there's basically been 1 clean on the new filter. This is really cool. After I'd done 50 cycles, it alerted me, and with a very obvious time to change or clean at least the filter. I cleaned it for the first time. Second time round I changed it, which again gives you an idea of how many times I've used this. And then that's the fan speed, and again you can vary that, and And then this final one here, this is set for sort of 12-inch, but you'd adjust that for basically the water level to get closer to the label for 7-inch singles, so to speak, or further away, so you don't wet the label on an album. It's all very cool. And then here we are. So this is software version 4. So that is the that's the the software version of this. And it actually tells me I've done 72 rinses because I didn't wait the second time for the alarm to come on to tell me to change the filter. I just changed it because I had the desire to, basically. And this is kind of the back button. But anyway, so if we go back to these, you'll see now that program 1 is 7:15, program 2 is 8:45, program 3 is 10:15, and program 4 is 11:45. And that is how I used it with the soak, which I think gives you about 1.5 minutes of soaking, pre-soaking at the before the ultrasonic starts. Then it gives you a period of ultrasonic cleaning. It's about 6 minutes on the top setting there, and then it gives then it drains and dries. And I say I've got the drying set to 3.5 minutes, but in 3.5 minutes of this, and the fan power is only set about halfway, it way outperforms the Humming-Guru in its drying. So it's basically, you put a record in, and even on the most dirty setting, in under 12 minutes you've got a dry, clean record to take out and play. And on the 7 minutes 15 seconds on the quick setting, but that is including drying, and that's also including it's either 1.5 minutes or 1 minute and 45 seconds of pre-soaking, which I kind of left on generally because why the heck not, So that's kind of the machine. And the filter is on the side here, which is really easy to change. And I will come. In fact, I won't. I'll mention this now in case you get sidetracked and forget. So I think I mentioned on my Humming-Guru video that after about 20 cycles, I changed the fluid and cleaned the filter. I didn't change the filter; I just cleaned it. Frankly, because the filter was pretty much looking clean. On this, and admittedly this was on 50 cycles, 50 cleaning cycles, which is when the machine alerted me to check the filter. It was really filthy. There was a kind of almost like a creamy grey sludge, and I have to say I was really impressed to see that. And it's if you look at the contrast between this and the Humming-Guru, and I've had the Humming-Guru running for 2 more weeks than this one, so this one's on its second filter. The Humming-Guru is still on its first filter, and it doesn't look dirty. And I've really got to. Well, there's only 2 possibilities here. Either the Humming-Guru filter doesn't work, so it's allowing filthy water back into the chamber, etc., or the Humming-Guru just isn't actually taking that filth off the record. And my gut feeling is it's the latter one of those. And I will get onto that in the listening notes. And I've just, like with the Humming-Guru, I just want to just flick through here that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages of notes just on the listening and various records that are cleaning and the performance. And I left making this video until I had sufficient experience with it to make an accurate assessment of its qualities and abilities. So first of all, I'll cut to the chase, and because some people don't want to sit here and listen to me waffling on about record cleaning for 40 minutes or however long this video is going to be. I'll cut to the chase. I think this is a brilliant record cleaning machine, absolutely brilliant. It is genuinely in another league to the Humming-Guru, not just in build quality, not just in convenience and use. One other thing I should mention is, whereas the Humming-Guru, the sound of it drove my cat absolutely senseless, my cat can stay in the room when I've got this on. You know, it's free to leave. I can leave the door open, and he'll just, you know, you might look up at it and think, oh, what's that strange thing you've got on there, Dad? But he won't run away. He won't look distressed in any way, shape, or form. So it's a lot more usable in just about every way. So in terms of performance, in terms of the cleaning job, and I will, as I say, I will get into this because I've done the work. I want to actually tell you all the the facts and figures, so to speak, and give you, those of you who are interested, my full thinking on this. Because at the end of the day, this is 5 times the price of the Humming-Guru, and if it's not in your budget, the Humming-Guru still is a very valid and very, very, very worthwhile thing to have. Whether I'll keep it as well, I don't know, but this is the record cleaning machine for me. But there are also a couple of, I wouldn't say they're negatives, but I'm going to, for those who don't want to sit through 40 minutes, I'm going to mention them now. Okay? Now, the first one is to do with temperature management. Now, I was using this most of last week, well, all of last week, and we've had a bit of a heat wave here in the UK. And in this room, as you can tell, this is a sort of I've got a glass ceilinged kind of kitchen, conservatory, dining room, and this room gets hot in the full sun. And I'd moved this back to the back of the room where it's not glass ceilinged to actually do all my testing and running. I wouldn't have vinyl records in full direct sunlight by any means. But it was still, the ambient temperature around where the machine was about 27 degrees, 28 degrees Celsius. Now, when this machine gets to 36 degrees, it goes automatically into a cooling cycle. Now, this is a really good thing because above that temperature, you really run the risk of damaging your records. And I believe many of the other machines on the market don't have this feature built in. So if the temperature in the vat gets up to and above 36 degrees, they won't cut off. They'll busily keep, cavitating away and destroy your records. So it's definitely a good feature for it to have. But in that kind of heat of summer situation I had here, sometimes it would actually twice within a cleaning cycle go into its cooling mode, which adds, it stops the ultrasonic cavitation, keeps the record revolving, and it blows its cooling fans across the vat of water. So it keeps your record safe. And it might be 20 minutes later rather than 14 minutes later, your clean, dry, perfectly clean and dry record comes out. All, everything's safe and sound and just fine and dandy. But it is a little irritating that it keeps going into that cooling thing. But that's using it in pretty extreme circumstances. It doesn't do that when you're, under normal situations like today. I don't know what it's 23.8 in here today. So, it's fine under normal circumstances. That's one thing. Is there another slight kind of thing with it that I would mention? Okay, so this isn't a complaint. I mean, the temperature thing isn't a complaint. I mean, frankly, well done, Degritter, for having a fail-safe cutout type or safety action. It doesn't cut out; it just stops the cavitation and cools the bath down. So that's brilliant. And I haven't used the second tank kind of approach where you have to swap tanks over midway through, and it would give you an obvious display. You change tanks, put your cleaning fluid, your rinsing fluid tank in. Now that strikes me as a pretty damn good idea, and you can do the same on the without the automation, you can kind of do the same on the Humming-Guru. And I guess on pretty much any ultrasonic machine, if you actually emptied the tanks out and refilled it, you could do that. But it did strike me that, a Degritter Mk2S or a Degritter 3 or a Degritter EX or a Degritter SE or something would not be a bad product for them to make, because it's, you know, this is a quality machine. I think they could easily make it. It would obviously have to be bigger, but actually incorporate 2 tanks in here. Have one tank that you'd fill with pure distilled water for rinsing, and one tank which you would clean with a cleaning kind of detergent or solvent type solution, and have that whole process automated. And then while you're at it, why not have some sort of refrigeration system built into that? So if you are using it in high temperatures, it could, actually actively cool down that water and keep it in the optimum temperature range. That would obviously be a bigger unit, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was twice the price. But, you know, their technology and their expertise, you know, clearly that would be capable, that would be possible. And I'm sure they would sell very, very well if they chose to make that kind of machine. Anyway, that's kind of my brief tour of the Degritter, and I do want to stress with regard, I mean, the tank holds it's between 1.1 and 1.2 litres of water. Compare that with the Hummingaroo's 350 mil. So it's 3 times the volume of water in there, which I kind of like that, because then, if you're cleaning the smaller the amount of fluid you're in the bath, so to speak, and you're cleaning something dirty, the more concentrated the filth is in the water, and and all that. And that, coupled together with the fact that this filter was filthy with a very smooth, I mean, I'm absolutely convinced it's just the greases and mold release kind of chemicals and the like off of the surface of the vinyl, because it's mostly clean vinyl I've been cleaning, or previously cleaned vinyl, because of course all of my records have been previously cleaned on the Lorrycraft. So it was only a few brand new records that I have cleaned, and obviously the Muse, songs of Bacharach and Costello. I'll run through the records I cleaned and give you more detailed notes in just a moment. But, in terms of its performance, I was really, really damned impressed. And to be honest, after testing the Hummingaroo, I was sceptical, to say the least. And frankly, it is an absolute joy to kind of come across something which does cost 5 times the amount, but in terms of the build, the use, the feel, the fit, the finish, and by no means least the performance, fully warrants its price tag. And I think that's just so encouraging and such a relief. So anyway, I just want to give a shout out to a few people who commented on my last video. Life of Vinyl 3003, he suggested, why not get Mrs. Denyer to do a blind test for me? With the Muse records, I say I had 4 of them. If you haven't seen that, you might find it amusing, but check this video here, and I'll go through my thinking there. But basically, I bought 4 copies, brand new, of exactly the same record, so that I could keep one as an uncleaned reference, one as my normal, what I am used to, because I'm not used to playing uncleaned records, frankly, because everything that comes into the house I give it clean on my Lorrycraft using Pure Audio Pure Groove, so it's got a chemical vacuum clean. So I gave one of them that as well, and I actually gave that one 3 successive cleans in the Pure Groove, just while I was at it, to kind of ascertain. Normally I think 1 clean is sufficient. Occasionally I'll give something a second, and on the very rare occasion a 3rd clean. And I did that and made sort of detailed listening notes to that. But then I've kind of got 2 references, and the other 2 I cleaned, one of them just in this, and one of them just on the Hummingaroo, over and over and over again. And I listened to them after every single clean. Just so that I had this on setting 4, which gives 6 minutes of ultrasonic action, and the Humming Grew, I had it on its maximum setting, which is 5 minutes. So that was kind of the closest parallels. And I also want to mention that one of the fundamental differences of the Degritter compared to all other ultrasonic record cleaning machines that I'm aware of, the vast majority use between 35 and 40 kilohertz as their cavitation frequency. This uses between 120 and 125 kilohertz, so it's 3 times the frequency. Now, how cavitation works is it's basically you've got something akin to a loudspeaker pressed up against the side of the tank, and it pushes sort of energy waves, which is seen there. This is it auto turn off after 15 minutes of non-use. So it's kind of, if you like, compressing and decompressing the water. And as you know, solids don't compress very well and liquids don't compress very well either. So kind of on the, extremely fast decompression, you get bubbles or cavities within, because they're not bubbles, they're cavities within the liquid opening up. And they're actually vacuums in there, because they're not bubbles. They're not a bubble where there's a gas. They're a vacuum. So it's an absence of anything. And then, of course, the pressure's altered as the 40 kilohertz, the sine wave of pressure, and they collapse. And as they collapse, it's like a sort of little black hole collapsing, and you get a pressure wave going out through or shock wave going out through the liquid, smashing into the vinyl and blasting off any particles of grit, dust, oils, greases, and whatever. So the size of those cavitations, those cavities, is inversely proportional. Sorry, it's proportional. No, it's inversely proportional to the frequency. So the size of the bubbles, for argument's sake, that this creates are much smaller than the bubbles that like the Humming Grew, the KL Audio, the Kermas, or any of these other machines create. And of course, they'll get further deeper into the groove than the larger bubbles would do, so to speak, or but also with as the size of these bubbles increases, which it does as the frequency is lesser. So, like the Kermas, for instance, at 35 kilohertz operating frequency, will kind of have about the largest cavitations, which have the biggest force. And of course, the Degritter's justification for using this higher frequency is, one, it gets sort of, it's finer, it gets deeper into the groove, but two, it's also gentler. And people talk about the aluminium foil test, and I haven't done that. I'm really not interested on that. And frankly, the fact that you can test cavitation machines by putting a disc of aluminium foil in there and it'll blow holes in it, A, I don't want to fill my machine with metal particles, and B, that whole thing worries me slightly, and that's something I will get onto with the Muse and the exhaustive testing. So anyway, back to my shout out. So thanks, Life of Vinyl 3003. We did get I did get my wife Joanna to involved in a blind test, and it completely backs up what we found in a sighted test. And she did it on me and I did it on her, and it was no offense to her, I wouldn't say she's an audiophile by any means, and but she could identify which one I was playing. I didn't tell her which one, and she got it within 10 seconds each time. And then I wanted just to give another shout out to Ian Melville, who suggested I use the same fluid in all 3 machines, including the Lorrycraft. But for me, Ian, this test really was about, and this whole investigation is about, ultrasonic machines, and I'm doing it for my own benefit. I'm videoing it, putting it out there because this may or may not be of interest and use to others of you. But what I really want to know is a £2,500 ultrasonic machine with whatever technology, 120k versus 40k, 300 watts power, incidentally, versus 50 watts power, is it better? That's what I wanted to find out. And that's why I've used the same fluid in these 2. The fluid I'm using in the clear audio is because that's my normal reference vacuum fluid. So I wanted to have that as my normal reference and compare the results from these to that. Not least, can I, with just ultrasonic cleaning, better what I can do with my normal routine. Previously, I tried as with the humming glue I mentioned, I tried my normal routine and then using the humming glue as an ultrasonic rinse, which worked incredibly well. Needless to say, the same worked. It had the same incredibly good results doing this, but. And again, cutting to the chase for those that don't want to sit through a lengthy video, yes, just cleaning on the Degritter, I've obtained the best cleaning results I've ever heard on any machine ever. It is stunning, and I'll get more into that in a while as we go through the detailed notes. And then finally, Tim Kimware 3537, what's my Ilfitol to water ratio? And for this I really did, and I'll tell you how I came about this. I filled the vat with pure distilled water, and both this and the humming glue I initially started with pure distilled water. And I also tried with Degritter's record cleaning fluid, which suggests 1.2 ml per tank, which is about a 0.1% to 0.2% mix. And yeah, I think it improves the cleaning, but I kind of think you can hear it on the end result as a residue. And, I found it was better still when you gave it a pure rinse afterwards. So what I used was Ilfitol, and by putting the record in there and kind of spinning it around with pure distilled water, and then getting my dropper, and I did this on the humming glue, to be honest to say, literally drip at a time, dripping Ilfitol in until I got a nice film of water. And I took it at the absolute minimum, and the absolute minimum concentration, the minimum solution, if you like, the weakest solution of Ilfitol to water I found was 0.03%, and that's what I therefore used in this and the humming glue for these comparative tests. And that is very, 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 very close to just pure distilled water, obviously. But I think it was, it was sufficiently dilute that I don't think there was any big benefit from doing a distilled water rinse afterwards. Effectively, I'm kind of just rinsing these, but or using the ultrasonic power to clean them. Anyway, those are the questions I want to mention, so I'll just put that to one side. Now, going through the performance. So I'll just kind of try and whisk through here and note the key points, and I'll go through quite quickly what record by record. So Songs of Baccarat and Costello, absolutely fantastic album, by the way. And I have to give a nod to Norman Maslow, whose channel I was watching when he was reviewing that, and I bought it some months ago now, but it's just sat there in its shrink wrap. And it's a double album, and it gave me an opportunity of listening to it uncleaned, giving it a lorry craft clean. At this point I was doing similar to what I was doing on the humming guru. The lorry craft clean, much more colour in the piano and horn, more detail and openness in the voice and drum traps and cymbals, much, much, much better. And then with the Degritter, and for that one I was on setting 2, incidentally. And that was also with the Degritter cleaning solution. There was much more light and delicacy, an astonishing amount of colour, an improved sense of timing, and frankly, an amazing improvement. So I kind of, I think that was kind of close, but if you remember with the humming guru, definitely on one clean, the Lorry Craft had it with the chemicals over a humming guru. And in this case, it was, I wouldn't like to call which one was better. And then I did a Lorry Craft followed by a Degritter, etc. Degritter followed by pure distilled water, that noticeably improved things. The sense of decay, timing, expression in the voice, and the overall kind of lightness, just all vastly improved. It was it was an interesting kind of first test. Then I got Paul Simon Graceland, which is an older record of mine that I've had and pre-cleaned before now. And again, beforehand it was full of pops and tigs. The sound felt slightly stodgy, slightly veiled. And the music got a bit lost behind the voice, and the voice itself was a bit scratchy. It was just a bit grainy, clipped and glassy, with almost no air at the top end. And again, on that, I cleaned one side on the Loricraft. That resulted in fewer pops, more detail, more light, more dynamics. Drums and cymbals really rang out. The voice was not so scratchy, and the music was always clear and intelligible. And then cleaned with a Degritter. So again, like the Hummingbird, of course, you have to do both sides at once. That gave more detail in the bass, more detail and expression in the voice. It utterly removed grain and grittiness in the music and the voice, and it really kind of picked up the agility of the bass, which is something that I think is kind of fundamental. Next record I tried, Steve Hackett, Under a Mediterranean Sky. This was a brand new one again. And on this I tried the Degritter with pure water, no wetting agent whatsoever. Okay, and I'd like to point out the Ilfotol that I mentioned earlier. That's a photographic wetting agent. I do think it would be classed as a surfactant. I'm not 100% certain on that, but it reduces the surface tension, and that's the whole point of a surfactant and a wetting agent. I think they are one and the same thing. Anyway, with the Steve Hackett again, even with pure water, it removed veiling, more contrast and drama. The guitar was livelier, it was brighter, it was more dynamic, more colourful. Just again, better all round. And now, Tubular Bells, Mike Oldfield, which I've did a video before, and if I can find it, I'll put a link up here if you want to go back to that one. But that's it's quite an old album. And I gave that 2 goes through the Degritter here with my standard 0.03 Ilfotol solution. That definitely lessened the noises. And whereas before, when I'd be cleaning it with the Loricraft, cleaning it on the Hummingbird, and some systems would sort of quieten it down but add a little veiling, and with this, all that happened, it never lessened the full kind of lights on brilliance and the light and illumination and the energy in the recording, but not overly bright. Don't confuse this with a sort of brightness. It was easily the best sounding I'd heard this record. It had all the speed and the pacing and the resolution, timing and involvement you'd want. A clarity that drew you in, but there was a lack of over brightness, which I did find at times that the Hummingbird could impart upon the music, and also the lack of bass or timing kind of smear really kept you captivated. So again, win-win over anything I'd achieved before. Then I went to Van Morrison Astral Weeks, which I've got 2 original UK orange pressings, and interestingly enough, one of them, the serial number is WS1768A1 star T stereo, and the other one is WS1768A2 star T stereo. And I got 2 of these because it's a very rare album. They're both in sort of VG++, NM- condition probably, and I couldn't choose between them. And again, I just gave them I think one time, each have had many cleans on the Loricraft, but one clean each on this, and I was really able to just within moments, that's the one I want to keep. Other records I just whipped through, so and again, these are all records, so I'll just whip through these quite quickly. But these are records I've had, you know, for decades and have been cleaned maybe 2 or 3 times over the 20, 30 years on the Loricraft. Not always with Pure Groove. Before that, I used L'Art du Son, and before that, I used the, you know, the standard homemade mix of distilled water, IPA, and Ilfotop. But Seal, his debut album, Future Love Paradise, it's quite funny because you kind of think back to that, and it was so dynamic and so well recorded. But actually, when you play it on a decent modern high-end system, it's quite flat and grey. It sounded a bit stodgy, the voice was gritty, the bass was undefined and flat, and it was rhythmically vague. 2 cleans on this. The vocal layering was excellent. The bass rhythms, the reverb and decay, guitar and keyboard layering were all excellent. And these are just typical things that would happen on record after record after record. Genesis selling England by the pound. I've got both a UK original and a Japanese original. Did the same to those. 1 or 2 cleanings, 2 cleanings in fact on each, just to see whether that really improved much. But again, most of the benefit would be quite apparent on 1 cleaning. But just, you know, I've written here, you can now hear the vocal reverb much better. The voice is much more solid, sort of pulling out from the background, so you can hear the space behind Gabriel's voice. The guitar has more colour. Just, you know, these were things that I noted time and time again. Whereas the Humming Guru would sort of, it would make things brighter and clearer, and it would improve the layering, that kind of resolution, the way you hear into things. I always felt that the Loricraft with the Clear Audio Pure Groove had a much better effect at bringing out the colour, if you like. This did kind of both. I mean, it really did do kind of both, but at the same time, it added a sweetness, a real, you know, the cleanliness it takes to another level. Heaven 17, Luxury Gap, Temptation, that was just, you know, quite dramatic improvement. Roxy Music, Avalon, I mean, uncleaned, it was, you know, it's a soft, vague, distorted thing. The soundstage was wider, deeper, brighter, and the whole music was snappier. It was a huge difference. Rush, Farewell to Kings, Xanadu. I mean, I love Rush, absolutely love Rush. And this was, you know, it's a bright, fizzy, very energetic kind of recording, and cleaned in my normal manner. The top end was fizzy. That's really kind of the only thing, but having cleaned it just with 1 go on a Degritter, that top end was just clear and extended, less fizzy. The bells, you know, which can't think of the word, you know, there's a bit where it's sort of, you know, drum rolls and this sort of church bells, and then Geddy comes in with just the most amazing bass riff. It just, you know, the bells just really rung out, the cymbals just really shimmered, and just everything had more definition, more solidity, far more extension and air. ABC, Lexicon of Love, I mean, just the way that opened up, it maintained all the dynamics, but opening up the colour, or revealing the full colours and opening up the layers, is just unbelievable. U2, Under a Blood Red Sky, I mean, that's murky, veiled, fuzzy top and bottom. And it did improve it, but I have to say, in that instance, I just think that's a pretty shocking recording, or shockingly mastered vinyl LP. I might have to try another one of those. And then I think the last one before we get onto the Muse, In Excess, Kick, Need You Tonight. Let's see, I was, you know, I was there with my wife. We both like 80s music, this sort of stuff. You know, it's kind of our era while we were young and having fun. And that one, you know, uncleaned. There were a few sort of very light ticks. The drum slightly on the left was quite soft. The guitar on the right was a little bit soft. Bass sounded mechanical. The voice sibilant and a bit soft. And the cymbals tizzy, I wrote. Now on that we had one setting, one clean on setting 2 here, which I think is like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes of ultrasonicking. You know, less than, well, 8 minutes 45 seconds from, you know, dry to dry and clean, and you know, that just that gave it a quieter surface noise. The drums were sharper, the guitars were sharper, the bass now has depth and weight, the voice is projected and clearer, the cymbals are cleaner and more extended, the rhythm was far more complex and involving, and you know, I'd kind of written down here, it just shows how good one brief, you know, not even, you know, the highest, you know, the full length cycle, but just how good one Degritter cycle can be. Right. And now we get down to the big one, the Muse, Will of the People. So, one clean each. I want to run through that. One clean on each. So, the uncleaned record. Now we started, basically I chose side 2. And there's one reason, a couple of reasons why I chose side 2. The first thing is I put my little labels, if you remember in the other video, I put my little labels on side 1. So putting them on, you know, playing side 2 is ideal if you want to do a blind listening, because you don't know without looking which one you've got. And also the first track on side 2 is a lot more proggy. It's kind of, there's a lot of space. It starts off as a very distant sort of, almost like in a distant church kind of sounding thing, and then full on in the foreground prog keyboards and guitars and drums and everything, and then a bit more spacious and quiet. It's a kind of full on prog, Queenish kind of, you know, smorgasbord of fantastic sound, whereas the first track on side 1 is a bit sort of full on, you know, kind of thrashy, grungy kind of a dirge almost. You know, that's why we chose side 2, and you know, frankly, we only played the track 1 over and over, and I reckon we must have played it probably 80 times now, and talk about earworms. But there we go. So, disc 1, uncleaned. It all sounds a bit messy. Massive, you know, I mean, it is massive. They're a full-on prog, massive, you know, wow kind of sound, and a bit glassy. All a bit messy, massive, and a bit glassy. So, disc 2, Lorrycraft cleaned with the fluid. More space and clarity, seems a little faster, which is a good thing, because it's kind of sort of clearing up the temporal thing, and that's something that, how involved you feel in music, it's a very important factor. Way more contrast and texture, more layering as it gets complased. It doesn't get so messy, and it retains all that weight, you know, of the massive sound of the uncleaned version. Now, disc 3, Hummingaroo cleaned. Now at this point we were on the, you know, 0.3% Ilfitol solution, and that carries on throughout. So more space, definitely kind of opened up the layering, but it seemed less dynamic than the Lorrycraft, a touch grey and colourless and flatter than the Lorrycraft. I mean, this isn't grey and colourless and flatter compared with the uncleaned version, but it is compared with the Lorrycraft. It left it sounding a bit mechanical and all a bit kind of one level, okay? And this would tie in with my previous video where I said that, you know, if you want something that's just a quick one-off, I think my gut feeling would be go for a vacuum and chemicals clean over a Hummingaroo. That's not to say the Hummingaroo is a useless machine, because it definitely isn't. Then we get to the Degritter, okay? So one clean. Now, in contrast with the Lorrycraft and the Hummingaroo, I would say it made the sound darker rather than brighter. It was the first one, you know, it definitely quietens the surface, And that was something. But you know, one clean on the Lorrycraft, one clean on the Hummingbird, both kind of brighten it. One clean on the Degritter, if anything, kind of darkened it slightly. It wasn't, and you know, if you're looking at that in a negative way, I'd say it didn't kind of quite have the drama of the Lorrycraft or the Hummingbird. But it definitely, the surface was quieter. It seemed faster, just as the Lorrycraft did, which is a very good thing. And it had the kind of the cleanliness that the Hummingbird had, but it also revealed the colours like the Lorrycraft did. So it's kind of like a cross between the Lorrycraft and the Hummingbird. So it's a, you know, sort of benefit, but you know, my summary to notes is more resolution, less hash and grittiness, but that it maybe hasn't got quite the drama of the Lorrycraft or the Hummingbird. That's on one clean. Two cleans, okay? So two cleans on the Lorrycraft. There was still some surface noise, but the depth opened up a bit more. Still not as much as the Degritter, and there was more colour to the sound, and the weight was still there. Two cleans on the Hummingbird. It sounds really good, but it still sounded a bit mechanical. And I've written here, again, if you can see my notes, I kind of colour coded it. So in blue, that's what I've done. Forgive if you've got very high def telly. Forgive me writing IPA here. I meant Ilfotol, but you know, that's my typo. And it sounds really good in green, and then in red, but still a bit mechanical. Something subliminal is fudging my brain. It seems a bit flat, headache inducing. So again, with the Hummingbird, there was something going on. It was just, I don't know what it was doing, but it felt like it was cleaning it unevenly, and kind of making it sound a bit mechanical and harsh, and I didn't like it. With disc 4, the Degritter, so this is on the second one of these, the bit in red down the bottom here is just not quite as ballsy as the uncleaned Lorrycraft and Hummingbird. So it's sort of, you're feeling you've lost just a little bit of the drama. This is on two cleans, but the positives, right? And where I've written things in bold, that's because it was really, really damned apparent. So this is with two cleans on the Degritter here. So at this point, by far the most three-dimensional, smoothest, most resolution, you know, it really is between this and the Lorrycraft at this point. Although this has by far the greatest depth to the soundstage and by far the quietest final surface. It's by far the sweetest and by far the most real voice and feeling of definition. Just that slight possible lack of kind of drama to it. And you've got to, and again, this is something I began to suspect after a couple more cleans, is actually, I think that drama is actually distortion, okay? But we'll get on to that. So, you know, I've written here just sort of returning to my references, the disc 1, the disc 2. Interestingly enough, the Lorrycraft one, I gave a third Lorrycraft clean. Vinyl surface still as noisy. And I think that's the thing about not rinsing with chemicals. There's a ceiling to how clean you can get your record using something like that without pure distilled water rinsing, but better still without a pure distilled water in an ultrasonic rinsing. But anyway, you know, the Lorrycraft, the depth good, dynamic contrast good, more colour, maybe still a bit of bass fudginess, and the busy sections still get a little confused. And frankly, I've written here, I'm not sure there's that much change over just one Lorrycraft clean, but you know, I did that many just to see. Now, 3 cleans on the Hummingbird, and this is interesting because at this point, I'm writing depth good, detail and layering good, voice good, bass detail good. At this point, better than the Loricraft. Okay, so that was the first point at which the Humming Guru managed to overtake the Loricraft. They both had 3 cleans, but this on 3 cleans, and if I show you here, it's all in bold and there isn't a single bit of red or anything. Easily the quietest surface, easily the greatest depth. The voice is most 3-dimensional. I can see behind the singer. And by that I mean it's like the voice is so pulled out from the rear wall of the soundstage that you can kind of feel the air and the space behind. And that's, that in terms of the reality of listening to, that's kind of what high-end hi-fi is about, if you like, and that reality. But again here, without brightness, and this is a real key thing about the Degritter, without brightness, he is projected in front of the background. Musical contrast, the pauses, decay are in another league to all of the others, and note all the others. And that musical contrast and the decay and the pauses, that was again at something. And this is 3 cleans. This is, where it was really, it had pulled out head and shoulders above the rest, and quite frankly, they never caught up. Okay, within that first track, on side 2 of the Muse album, there's a busy part, and then there's a sort of, you've got just a brief pause between sort of bars of the music, if you like, and you just hear the decay very completely of the end of one bar. And then there's that pause, and you have that brief expectation, and then the next line comes in. And the way this, treated the record such that my system could play this and you'd hear this, it just left, at that point in time, it wasn't like we're arduously kind of listening. And I'll point out, each of these things, so, disc 1, uncleaned, we'll play the first track, then we'll play the first track again. Disc 2, uncleaned, etc., etc. So we listen to that first track twice for every step of the way. So at this point here, we've listened to 4 times uncleaned, doubled up, that's 8 times, 16 times for 1 clean, 24 times for 2 cleans, 32. So we listened to it for 32 times at this point. The musical contrast, the pauses, that feeling of expectation when you're in a pause, you kind of listening to the decay, and then there's just that sort of dynamic emotional tension, and then the next line comes in, and it's what makes music for me. It's what gets me in the tears, frankly, at times with music. It puts the hair, gives you goosebumps, put your hairs on end. And I've just written here, is it in another league to all of the others? Easily the best. And again, it's no longer dark sounding. So this is 3 cleans. And that dark sounding, that was something I was wondering whether it was a inferiority, and it wasn't, the drama that I talked about. It was something I just wasn't entirely certain about, but I've written this in capitals too. No longer dark sounding, just not bright. And that's the point. It's not bright, it's just natural. But there's a total lack of low-level noise veiling and merging with the musical layers. And I just wrote here, at this point, 3 cleans. The Degritter has it. It's way more depth even than the Humming Guru. Way darker background than that. Sorry, what should we say? Way more depth even than the Loricraft. Way darker background than the Humming Guru. The start, the stop, the timing, the decay, the reverb are in another league. Okay? So that's 3 Degritter cleans. And then I'll go on, but this is kind of quite interesting, because this what I did at this point, I kind of stopped referring back every time to discs 1 and disc 2 to my reference. It was just a shootout between the Humming Guru and the Degritter, because frankly at this point the Degritter was way ahead, but I wanted to see if successive cleanings the gap would get bigger or get smaller, or what would happen. So disc 3, the humming group, 4 times cleaned, very dynamic, but I've written here really mechanical. It sounded powerful, it's a good thing, but harsh. Not sure this isn't a step backward, although the surface is now notably quieter. Now there's 2 things there. One is I may not have given it quite enough time after cleaning before I played it, and this is important. When you've cleaned a record, whether it's on the Loricraft, on the Degritter, or on the Humming Guru, or in any other cleaning machine, I'll insert a photo here of my little drying rack, which I got from a Disco Anti-Stat. But it's really important to give them, I would say, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of air drying in a dry room, because if you don't, they can actually sound worse. And I think it's just the tiniest bit of moisture in that groove will massively increase the drag on the diamond, and really things will sound bad. So I'm not sure about this, I just don't honestly know, but 4 cleans on the Humming Guru, really mechanical, harsh, not sure this isn't a step backwards. Whereas 4 greens on the Degritter, silent surface, easily the best by far. But again, I'm not sure it's much improved over the 3rd cleaning. And again, the point here is, I did this to kind of test the destruction and really work out exactly what's going on, and that's why I bought the 4 Muse albums. So I actually go through, and ultimately I play them, clean them and play them 12 times each. The end result is really quite telling. But I just, I wanted to, I wasn't at this point sure whether, the Degritter was reaching its kind of point of, it's, certainly not worse, but it's, it seems to be approaching its sort of zenith of performance, if you like. The Humming Guru, I'm not sure. I think it sounded worse that last time. So at this point, I changed the water in the Humming Guru, okay? And gave it a 5th clean, and which I wrote very dynamic, clear, great detail and weight, but in red, still slightly on the messy, overly busy side. The louder sections get harsh and wearing. And of course, to keep things in check, I gave the Degritter. I didn't actually change the water here, but dynamic, fast, detailed, textured, top to bottom. It was just sounded bloody perfect. Now at this point, which was I think last Monday or Tuesday, I got a new delivery of distilled water because you get through it. So I actually replaced both machines' water and with exactly the same solution. I mixed it up in some big jugs, cocktail jugs, and you measured it out using droppers and my stylus pressure gauge to sort of weigh out exactly the right amount. So I know exactly that they were 0.03% Ilfitol. So 6 cleans, Humming Guru. Quiet surface, dynamic, bass heavy and textured. Keyboards have got full colour. So it is interesting that successive recording cleanings with the Humming Guru are beginning to bring out the colour. It still seems to kind of, still seems to be kind of improving it in certain areas, but there was still this, I've written in red here, still smearing, overly glary on busier sections which get messy and confused. 6 cleans on the Degritter. More depth, more width, cleaner, clearly more detailed, better decay, no smearing or glare at all, bass fully textured. It just feels right. It's not overblown and vague, no confusion. And I went back and checked against disc 1, the unclean version of this, and just out of interest, it sounded, in comparison, screechy. It sounded dynamic, but it sounded screechy, sonically flat, both tonally and in colour-wise. The bass was fat, And I think this fat base is where the Degritter was apparently losing a little bit of kind of drama in the earlier stages, because I'd removed some of that fat, but I wasn't necessarily seeing it like that. And the other thing, there was a lot of vinyl raw on the uncleaned one. Anyway, we go back to 7 cleanings. You know, the humming guru, good space, base tighter, top end to touch glassy, confused, messy on now sections. And the Degritter, same again, you know, quiet vinyl surface, much more light than the Humming Guru Clean one. At this point, the bass is way more agile, and textures, the cymbals, etc., more open. The vocal has more projection, easily the best. And then this is the point where the Degritters, you know, it came up here with a, you know, kind of flashing symbol to indicate that the filter was had done 50 cycles and needed cleaning or changing. And it really was truly filthy, with a dark grey sludge in it. You know, so I cleaned the filters in both machines, and I replaced the fluid in both machines again, just so that we're on a level playing surface. Now, 8 Humming Guru cleans. You know, this is in clean fluid, clean filters, blah, blah, blah. Surface noise is lessened than it was, but it's still a bit glassy and glaring. The 8th clean on the Degritter, still the most ambient, way more resolution, way more separation, nothing's confused, easily the best. And it's definitely not going backwards. I was not sure that the Humming Guru was, you know, I think from clean, I think it was clean 4, you know, clean 3 on the Humming Guru. I wasn't sure whether it was starting to degrade the performance. But anyway, we persist. 9 cleans. It's just, you know, slightly soft lows and mids and tops. In comparison with the Degritter, the Humming Guru, just, it feels vague. Not sure in this respect we're moving forward, I said. Whereas on the Degritter, you know, just more air, more ambience. You can hear the space better. There is more top end, but it's not bright. It feels faster, more agile, defined, extended and open, and absolutely the full gamut of colour. Just unbelievably good sounding. And I'm just going to kind of skip forward here, really. It's I mean, we end up here, the final one. This is on 12 cleanings. The Humming Guru. It sounds energetic, but the voice is a touch harsh. All of the busy sections get messy and harsh and a bit glassy. Now, there was always, even from the word go with the Humming Guru, if you look at the comments of, you know, a little bit grey, a little bit colourless, mechanical, you know, that's kind of the way it went. You know, 2 cleans, you know, a little bit mechanical, something subliminal, fudging my brain. It seems a bit flat, headache, you know, the kind of thing that you think if you listen to it for too long, it'll give you a headache. But ballsy, you know, dynamic, with lots of kind of drama to it. But, you know, after 12 cleans, it's sort of energetic, but, you know, a touch harsh, all a bit messy and harsh and glassy. So I'm not sure with the Humming Guru whether that is just its trait. I'm thinking back, and it is a few years ago when I tried the Kermas, which uses 35 kilohertz as its operating frequency, so it's similar. You know, it had remarkable cleaning effects like the Humming Guru does, you know, used in addition to a vacuum machine, which is how I used it back then. I mean, I did do the full Kermas thing as well, but I was just a little bit kind of concerned that it hadn't, you know, my fear was that it actually made the vinyl brittle and actually a bit scratchier, kind of, more harsh sounding than it was. At absolutely no point did the Degritter do this. So, I've cleaned it 12 times. I'm not sure from 3 goes on with the Humming-Guru that we were actually getting much better. In fact, that we were getting any better. I'm not sure. So I think if you've got a Humming-Guru, 3 5-minute goes, I think that's, you're probably going to get it as clean as you'll get it. This is not using chemicals, incidentally. This is using an extremely dilute Ilfitol solution, 0.03%. You will clearly get more cleaning effect with using their, I'd probably suggest you use their own cleaning fluid. But, ideally then I would personally want to rinse in distilled water, so you've got to change tanks. And obviously the same would apply with the Degritter. But with the Degritter, I think, going back to my notes here, where are we? Degritter. Okay, the Force Clean. I mean, it sounds absolutely beautiful. Easily the best by far, although I'm not sure it's much improved over a 3rd cleaning. So I think, 3 to 4 cleanings on this, if you really, 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 really want to get in there. But, if you want to do 12 cleanings, as I did, there's no question whatsoever that this is damaging your record. With the Humming-Guru, I don't know. I just don't know. I'm not saying that it does. I just don't know. That harshness just I couldn't take it away. Now, I know you're probably going to say, well, why don't you now take the 12 Humming-Guru cleaned records and give it, a couple of goes in this and see if that does the job. And I am tempted to do that, but I kind of want to keep those records as they are, because I've got a few friends that haven't had the opportunity of playing these two, and they are, they're records of this experiment. And, I've definitely got a few friends that I want to actually hear that, okay, there's an uncleaned version. There's one which has had 12 Humming-Gurus. There's one which has had 12 Degritters, and for argument's sake, there's one that's had 3 of my normal Loricraft with the Pure Groove fluid cleanings. So I might at some point go there and do that. Or I might at some point take the Humming-Guru one and just give it another 8 cleanings, for instance, to see if it does actually really get worse. I don't know. I'm not sure that it has actually got worse. I'm just not sure, but it's definitely harsh and gritty. I'd probably still rather play that than the uncleaned version, but there's no question I'd rather play my Loricraft cleaned version to the 11 Humming-Guru cleaned version, which I think is actually telling, because there was a point in here after 3 cleans, the Humming-Guru I definitely felt was better sounding than the Loricraft. So yeah, I'm not sure on that, but my fear is that the Humming-Guru one has started to actually degrade. But the end result is, with this, there is no question. It's again, I'll just more space, more ambience, deeper soundstage. Bass is more visceral, more solid, more textured, more detailed. The voice is more solid, 3-dimensional, separated from the background. You can feel the air and the space behind the head of the singer. Everything is tidier. Every single note, on the Muse, which gets quite complex, you could kind of tell the colour, the tonal colour of each keyboard and each keyboard press and each guitar. It's quite stunning. Musically, in terms of the timing, the sense of loud and soft, the stop and start, the urgency and the energy, it's stunning. and this is quite easily the best record cleaning machine I've had the good fortune to try out. But Degritter, if you are listening, I would suggest that you look at developing one with dual tanks and also inbuilt cooling, because I think then it would be nigh on perfect. And on that note, I will say thank you. Oh, actually, one last thing. The sorry, it's kind of quite important, but as with the humming brew, I mentioned the 7-inch adapter thing. Now in this, you just have to go there and select the water level, you know, with adjusting this. But I tried a 7-inch single in here, and it cleaned it all the way to the run-out groove, absolutely fine. This is the 7-inch adapter, which just sort of slots in here. And one other thing as well, with the humming groove, there was just a slight, you know, have you got it in right? With this, absolutely no question. Every time you just drop your record in. I mean, basically, you put your record in, you press the button, and, you know, 10, 15 minutes later, you come back and you take your record out. It beeps at you 3 times to tell you it's dry and ready, and that's it. It pumps the water in from the reservoir, it pumps it back to the reservoir, filters it, which, as we've said, it does so very, very efficiently and thoroughly. It's a superb machine. Anyway, thank you very, very, very much for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Bye now. Bye.